Welcome back to Idle Chit Chat. In the last video, I talked about how weird I think it is when people get really upset about anime dubs, and it got me thinking about how so many internet controversies about nerd canon and nerd orthodoxy, you look back at them, and a lot of them are just ridiculous and cringeworthy. And I'm pointing this out because I think when you're young, when your perspective on what matters is lacking, you can get wrapped up in things that are dumb. Because in your line of vision, in your dorky friend sphere, something really stupid like the casting of an anime dub might seem really important when you're 14, when you're 15. And then when you get older, when you look back at a lot of the things that you were mad about when you were 15, I think a lot of people go, oh God, why did I care about this? Why was I so mad about this? This is so stupid. Why did that matter to me? And this will be my question of the day for you guys. What is something stupid that you were really, really upset about when you were younger? Like an issue that you were really passionate about that you're now embarrassed about? Because for me, it was how much I cared about sports takes. I would watch all these sports shows when I was a teenager, and every time one of the hosts said something that I disagreed with, it made me mad. It made me, want to reach out to them to tell them that I thought they were wrong. Like, I had it in my mind that I needed to correct their inaccurate sports opinion. And now I look back at how upset I got at certain ESPN personalities when all they were doing was predicting a different team to win the World Series than I thought was going to win the World Series. And I think, why was I so invested in this? Why did I care so much if someone's sports opinions differed from my own? What a waste of my time to get mad about something like that. And this got me thinking about some of the other dumb, nerdy controversies from when I was younger. And it made me remember an absolutely amazing controversy that will be the focus of the rest of this video. And that controversy was when GameSpot reviewed The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. Here's the backstory on this. In 2006, the Nintendo Wii was released along with the highly anticipated next edition of Zelda. It was highly anticipated not just because it was Zelda, and not just because it was coming out on a new console and was supposed to look better and play better than ever before. It was that the previous Zelda game had been cel-shaded and had looked cartoony, and there were a ton of Zelda fans who didn't like that game had been different. And so even though that game was very successful relative to other GameCube games, and even though most fans eventually came around to love it, at the time, there were a lot of Zelda fans who refused to acknowledge that game, Wind Waker, as a true Zelda game. They saw it as like a cutesy, non-canon distraction. This was, of course, another dumb internet controversy. But anyway, so when Twilight Princess was coming out, fans were really clamoring for it because it was a return to the traditional, darker, more epic world of Zelda. It wasn't cartoony, it wasn't cutesy. And so, the game isn't even out yet. It hasn't even been released yet when GameSpot.com publishes an early review of The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. It was written by Jeff Gerstmann, who later went on to found Giant Bomb, and in his review, Gerstmann gave Twilight Princess an 8.8 out of 10. And Zelda fans were apoplectic. They were outraged. They were pissed because he had given it an 8.8. Now, it should go without saying, but 8.8 is not a bad score. Gerstmann gave the game a very positive review, and he even did an accompanying video review of Twilight Princess, which he closed out by saying, quote, "Overall, Twilight Princess is a great game that anyone considering buying a Wii should definitely check out. It's got a ton of that classic Zelda feel, but maybe has a little too much of it for its own good. You'll love the game's great design and puzzles, but you'll probably also have the feeling that it could have been so much more with some presentational additions." So, he said it was great, and in GameSpot's official rating system, 8.8 qualified as great. But Zelda fans would not accept that a Zelda game could be seen as anything less than immaculate. To them, a score under 9 was not just an insult, it was journalistic malpractice. It was something that Gerstmann deserved to be punished for. And so, Zelda fans went ballistic over his review, even though, again, his review came out before any of them could even play the game, so they were furious at him without even knowing if he was right or not. When I say they were furious, his review was like the gaming controversy of the year. It was scandalous to people. And we can actually look back at some of the forum posts that were made on GameSpot and other gaming sites in reaction to that review, thanks to people like Metal_Mills, and it's amazing and horrifying because there's some really offensive shit in there that you can see with your own eyes if you skim some of these. But yeah, Nintendo and Zelda fans just lost their minds over this. And for a time, this one review dominated every major gaming forum. You couldn't avoid people railing against this review if you wanted to. So, as an exercise, I thought it would be interesting to actually go back and read some of those posts. Not the really hateful ones, but let's take a look at what some of the GameSpot forum posts on that review were actually saying. And I want to do this because I was curious how much, if at all, the internet had changed since 2006. And if these posts were as bad as the titles of those forum threads suggested they were. I'm not going to read every line of some of these posts, but I'll share some of the highlights that I found from just a few of the hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of forum complaints that were made about this specific review from just one particular GameSpot thread from 2006. What the fuck? Why in hell did GameSpot let someone who doesn't even believe in a console review one of its biggest titles? Jeff equals biased. A proper review equals unbiased. Enough said. I am outraged by this score. Outraged! Most horrible review GameSpot has ever done. If we all protest, I think the review score will change. Okay, at first I thought I'd keep my mouth shut about my opinions of the score, mainly because I haven't played the game yet, and Jeff would know better than most, seeing as he's played it, but then I looked around and no other site gives it a score anywhere near 8.8. Plus, Jeff seems to be a bit of a weirdo from what I've seen on other forums, so I'm not going to accept this score, I'm afraid. Better luck next time, Jeff. I almost believe that this is worth firing Jeff Gerstmann. I hope Jeff gets fired. His bias is just too much. I think Jeff should not be allowed to review another Nintendo game for the rest of his life. You are being way too cool about the review. This is madness. What is the world coming to? He is a graphics whore. I'm only here to post my rage, then I am blocking this site from my computer. I doubt Jeff the Tard even played through the game completely. Parenthetically, back in the mid-2000s, the most common insults on forums like this were people calling each other gay and people calling each other retarded. Like, if you sift through any flame war from around this time, you will see the word tard just all over the place. Really cringy. But anyway, I hereby nickname Jeff the Tard an official Wii hater. See what I mean? Now this one's great. You really let me down, GameSpot. Honestly, I bet Red Steel gets a 6.5 after this. It sickens me. Evil! Oh well, I'm not even gonna say where you can stick that review. You have no taste. From now on, I suggest you let us do the reviewing. My gosh, it's almost worth crying about. I could sue! Well, whatever. You are the one who will get the hate mail. And finally, remember that thread yesterday about how Jeff's bias might affect Twilight Princess's rating? I do. I intend to honor my word, and I don't know if I will ever so much as peek into an official GameSpot page again. Though I do like these forums, and so I will remain here. Together we can band in Jeff hate and we love. Maybe in the future, GameSpot can rebuild its honor. Maybe. And it goes on. There were lots and lots of people claiming they were going to become loyal IGN readers in protest of GameSpot, and how they were never going to visit GameSpot ever again. There were also lots of really, really mean comments towards the writer that I didn't feel like including here. Like, even more mean. And obviously, most of the posts from 2006 have been lost to time, but of the ones that you can still access, there are some ones that are bad. And the remarkable thing is that years later, there were a bunch of threads on gaming forums that I found in which people looked back at this controversy 5 years later, 10 years later, etc. And in each of those threads, the people reflecting on this were just amazed at how absurd the reaction had been to Twilight Princess getting one score on one site that was 2 decimal points below a 9 out of 10. People looked back at that quote-unquote scandal just a few years later and were amazed at how frothing at the mouth mad Zelda fans had gotten about this. In retrospect, virtually everyone agreed that even if they hadn't agreed with this one guy's review by fractions, it wasn't worth freaking out over. And there were even some posters in those threads who had contributed to that pylon who now looked back at what they had written and regretted it. In fact, I want to share what someone named Maddie FTM wrote on that giant bomb forum that I showed earlier in 2011, 5 years after Twilight Princess was released and reviewed. Quote, "One of my least proud moments on the internet was sort of getting involved in that stuff. I was never one of the guys shouting and calling Jeff names and whatnot, but I did voice a strong dislike of the score in some of the threads on the GameSpot forums. I don't think I'd even played the game at the time. I was an idiot. Fortunately, we grow up from that shit and realize how dumb it is. I'm sure most of the people posting them will look back now with embarrassment, just as I do. It's one of those internet things. We've all been there. It seems weird that it's not actually that long ago, yet here I am looking back on it and thinking about how much of an idiot I was." And a lot of that mirrors what I said at the beginning of this video. That, yeah, sometimes when you're young, you can get swept up in dumb things. And if you do, hopefully the dumb thing you're wrapped up in isn't damaging or harmful to someone else, because that's never acceptable. But this also speaks to the larger problem with fandom in general, which is that a lot of people don't grow out of this. A lot of people don't mature as fans, and instead enter adulthood still believing that they need to protect the entertainment that they like from any and all criticism. That they need to go out and find the people who disagree with them and crush them. And when people like that get together and form their own fan groups and communities about the thing they like, those groups can become so insular and so devoid of any kind of ambiguity or nuance that they can go insane, that they can wind up getting mad about things and caring about things that are preposterous. It's why so many fan bases, regardless of how pure or inclusive the thing they're based on is, can become completely toxic. People can get so wrapped up in this stuff that they don't even realize that what they're angrily fixated on is unimportant. And if you get far enough down that rabbit hole to where any kind of outside dissent is outrageous to you, you can get to a point where you're being an asshole to someone and you're rationalizing it because in your mind, this issue has become so important that it is acceptable for you to be a dick about it. That's where a lot of fan bases wind up. And it's how a lot of young people get caught up in crap like this in the first place. Because they look around one day and everyone else in their fan group is mad about something, so-and-so saying they didn't like this thing or whatever. And so they think, well shit, if everyone else is furious about this stupid issue, why shouldn't I be mad about it too? This is why, incidentally, I'm skittish about getting near any fan base, because I don't trust any of them. If even something as delightful as Nintendo products can drive people mad, then what can't? To me, the lesson here and of the last video too, I guess, is that no matter what you're a fan of, and no matter how big a fan of something you are, there should always be some level of separation between you and the thing you're into. Your fandom should have just enough moderation to it so that you can always step back from it and go, you know what? If someone feels differently about this thing that I like, I'm not going to freak the fuck out over it or be a huge asshole about it. That's it. Not a particularly deep message from me to close out this video, but seriously, if you can honestly appraise yourself and say, well, hey, at least I know I would never behave like that if something I liked got an 88 out of 100, then your fandom is probably okay. Because as simple a threshold as that would seem to be, a lot of diehard fans from a lot of different fan bases cannot meet that. And that's regardless of how old they are.